He helped to draft it. Now he wants to change it. Iraq's Prime Minister says the country's constitution was written in haste and needs to be reconsidered. He wants more power for central government. But how can he achieve that? And would his plans be good for Iraq? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Lauren Taylor. Iraq's Prime Minister Nouri Al-Maliki has said that the current constitution needs amending to bolster federal power. His statement came during a period of rising tension in the north between Kurds and Arabs, who've accused the Kurds of trying to expand their region to include areas under central government control. Mohammed Shakir has more.
About 3 months before the local provincial elections in Iraq, Prime Minister Nouri Al-Maliki is trying to regain control of a disintegrating state. He has called for the amendment of the constitution in order to redraw the lines of the federation to strengthen central government's control. Despite being a founding member of the constitution drafting committee, he has been very critical of the current constitution.
Having provincial and local governments without a strong central government capable of protecting our national sovereignty and security is not possible.
Maliki sees a strong central government as a necessity to maintain control of vital security and foreign policy issues. The proposed amendments seem to be in response to recent moves by the Kurdistan regional government. It has offered the US the chance to build military bases and has given oil concessions to various oil companies without consulting the central government. The move to change the constitution comes at an awkward time for the Bush administration, which is keen to resolve an agreement on the future presence of US troops in Iraq before the end of this year. Regionally, while Turkey remains uncomfortable about an autonomous Kurdish region in the north of Iraq and would support a strong central government, Maliki's call has received the blessings of Iran, as there was no objection from Iran's man in the ruling alliance, Abdulaziz al-Hakim. Iran knows that it's better to deal with a strong central government in Baghdad, thus sacrificing the proposed Shia homeland in southern Iraq, than enduring an autonomous or independent Kurdistan with US bases a stone throw away from its borders. But with a divided parliament, how will Prime Minister Maliki be able to pass such amendments? Mohammed Shakir for Inside Story.
Well, joining us now are our guests. In Erbil, Khalid Saleh, who's an analyst on Iraqi affairs and an advisor to the Prime Minister of Kurdistan's regional government. In London, Sabah Al-Mokhtar, he's head of the Arab Lawyers Association. And in Washington, D.C., Ivan Eland, he's director of the Center on Peace and Liberty at the Independent Institute. That's a think tank focusing on public policy. And he's also the author of The Empire Has No Clothes, the US Foreign Policy Exposed. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, all of you. Khalid Saleh, if I could start with you. Do you think that Maliki's move now on the constitution is linked to what Kurdistan has been doing, for instance, offering the US bases in its region without consulting with the central government?
I don't think so. I think Maliki's position is more in an early election campaign on the south, because the provincial elections will come at the end of January. Kurdistan is exempted from that. Kirkuk is also exempted from that. And he knows very well that his party is splitted. He has a very narrow support in the parliament. So he's trying actually to boost an election campaign, an early election campaign, by using his position as a prime minister.
Sabah Al-Mokhtar, would you agree with that it's purely politically motivated, or do you think that Kurdistan has gone out of control and he's trying to rein back in the country?
Well, certainly Kurdistan has gone out of control. Maliki knows this. We have a president, he has a president who's representing the Kurds rather than the Iraqis. You have the head of the Kurdistan area offering bases for the Americans, the oil, all your report. But the more important thing, I think we are seeing the new lining up of the Arabs versus the Kurds and the Kurds versus the Arabs. Having finished with the Shiite-Sunni divide, we are now getting into this position, and I think Maliki is trying to get everybody that is on the Arab side to deal with a situation where the Kurds have gone way beyond the limit in terms of having their army in areas which they wouldn't leave. They've done the Christians in Mosul. They are trying to expand areas. They are behaving, and even on the foreign policy, the Minister of Foreign Affairs is acting as if he's the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kurdish Republic.
Ivan Eland, what's your take on what's going on here and what's behind it?
Well, I think it's a combination of both factors. elections, and also the fact that Kurdistan doesn't really want to be a part of Iraq. And just proposing a stronger central government will probably lead to a civil war. I think they should go the opposite way, and actually there's a lot of autonomy already in the the Iraqi constitution, but I think they should probably go further the other way, because the only way that Iraq will stay together is by a loose confederation where you have local groups governing their own areas. And of course the Iraqis have to sort out all that themselves. The U.S. can't do anything about that. And I don't think they should. But you can say we need a stronger central government, but that's just impossible with all the tribal, sectarian divisions in Iraq. It's just not going to work.
If I could bring you back in, Khalid Saleh, for the neighbours around Iraq, what do you think in general their preference would be for? A broken up Iraq or one that's still unified? For instance, Iran.
Iraq is in the face of reconstruction. Kurdistan rejoined Iraq in 2003 voluntarily. Kurdistan was an isolated area from Iraq for almost 13 years. Even the budget did not come from Baghdad. It came through a United Nations sponsored oil for food program. So Kurdistan has actually rejoined the rest of Iraq in the sense that they want also to contribute with democratic experience Kurdistan has acquired. Kurdistan has now constitutional rights. No one in Iraq will be able unilaterally to propose a constitutional amendment that will affect the area, because that is specified in the constitution. And the remarkable position Dr. Maliki is taking is he has made a constitutional oath, and he is now going against that oath he has taken when he came to government. This is part of a campaign that has to do with election rather than it has to do with the fundamental changes of the constitution, because the specific way to change the constitution is already in the constitution. It needs a power sharing agreement. It needs agreement between the political parties to be online, and Kurdistan has by no means exceeded those powers because they are well defined in the constitution.
Sabah al-Mokhtar, would you agree that Kurdistan hasn't been stepping out of line, or do you is that something that you would agree with?
No, I think the main problem is that the Kurds actually genuinely believe that they are a state and they are coming back into a state and all this, that and the other. But the problem we have is with the Americans. The Americans, whether one looks at the elephant or the donkey, with or without lipstick, have not even learned their lessons from the British Empire. When they want to divide countries, they ought to do it properly. The Americans are now working on a failed policy. Biden have come out with this idea of dividing Iraq. It takes, first of all, it is not in the interest of Iraq. It's not in the interest of the neighbors in the region. Turkey and Iran will absolutely have their say. And at the end of the day, it is not even in the interest of the American policy. Those American politicians seem to be living in cloud cuckoo land. They think they can take a map, draw lines on it, and they create states as they want, regardless of whether it is survivable or not. A Kurdish state is not survivable. A Shiite state in the south will threaten the American alliance in the south with the Saudis and the Kuwaitis.
Ivan Eland, if I could bring you in on that, because I know you proposed an idea for breaking up Iraq before even the Biden plan, which was just mentioned just there. I mean, Biden's plan was supposed to be for a decentralised Iraq, but still with a central kind of umbrella over it. Is that something that you think that he would still propose at this point, or do you think he will have changed his mind in the meantime?
Well, I don't know what's going to happen. You know, American politicians will say one thing when they're not in the election campaign or in office, and if they get a new job, as Biden is, you know, he has to follow what Barack Obama wants to do. But I think his plan has some merit, and I agree with the previous speaker that the United States should not impose this, but I just think that Iraq to some extent is partitioned on the ground already, and I'm not saying going to a full partition, but I think we have to, if we want to keep Iraq together, we have to have a loose confederation where the groups have various autonomies, the tribes have various autonomies, and the Iraqis have to work this out. And I agree. I don't think the United States should impose anything. I think we've imposed too much already on Iraq. But the reality is that Kurdistan doesn't want to be part of Iraq, and probably parts of the many of the Shia areas don't want to be part of Iraq either. So what we have to do is devolve the authority so that the local militias can provide their own security. And in fact, the U.S. policy under the Bush administration has undermined the state, because it is now training Sunni militias, and it's trained Kurdish and Shia militias under the rubric of training government forces. So to me, that the Bush administration has already taken us down the road towards at least autonomy and maybe partition.
Khalid Saleh, at the moment, of course, there's all the background of the attempt by the Iraqi cabinet to agree an agreement with the US about what to do about the presence of US forces in Iraq, and there's a deadline on that, and they're still talking about it. Is it your impression that Al-Maliki is trying to play tough on the agreement about the US forces in order to then be able to push through constitutional change? What's your take on the...
Well, you can see it as a democratic game Maliki is playing right now, and if that is the case, then Iraq is actually moving towards a democratic political system in which politicians will use different tools to divert attention rather than killing each other. That will be a good news. But let me come back to the issue of Kurdistan rejoining Iraq. Kurdistan will remain within Iraq as long as Iraq remains democratic, federal, and there is a meaningful power-sharing agreement that works for the whole country, not only for Kurdistan. Kurdistan's politicians are very pragmatic, and they know very well as going into an adventurous policy will not work in this region. They have refrained from that policy in the 90s when they had a lot of opportunities. And Kurdistan's population is very keen to keep Iraq democratic and federal because they have a history of genocide. They don't want that to be repeated. What they want and what they have shown the world is they have embarked on an economic policy that's been sound, that's attracted investment. The oil contract that was referred to in the introduction has actually been done within the framework of the Iraqi constitution. Nothing of that has been harmful for Iraq. Actually, it brings inward investment and will develop the country, and we hope that the rest of Iraq will get a chance to do the same, region by region, province by province.
Let me just stop you there briefly. We're going to take a very quick break, and we'll be talking a lot more about all this when we come back, including how the Iraqi people are reacting to the amendment call. Do stay with us.